February 19, 1945. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. Colonel Takeichi Nishimura peered through the observation slit of his reinforced concrete bunker, watching American Marines struggle up the black volcanic sand slopes. Through his binoculars, he spotted something that made him actually laugh. Young Americans carrying what looked like oversized metal tubes over their shoulders, clumsily maneuvering the awkward weapons while under fire. "They've brought pipes to a fortress war," Nishimura remarked to his executive officer, Captain Hiroshi Yamada, unable to suppress his amusement. "Look at them. They can barely move with those ridiculous tubes. What do they think they're going to accomplish? We have 3 feet of reinforced concrete, steel reinforcement bars, and overhead protection designed to withstand naval bombardment. They respond with pipes?" What Nishimura didn't know, what none of the confident Japanese officers reinforcing their bunkers throughout the Pacific could have imagined, was that those pipes represented a physics revolution that would make concrete fortifications obsolete overnight. Within minutes, the bunker that Nishimura had spent 3 months constructing, using techniques refined through years of defensive warfare, would cease to exist. The shaped charge technology inside those awkward tubes would turn 3 feet of reinforced concrete into lethal shrapnel, transforming elaborate fortifications from protective cover into concrete coffins. But in February 1945, as Nishimura watched Marines fumbling with their bazookas on the slopes below, the Imperial Army had no idea they were witnessing the weapon that would systematically dismantle every defensive position they'd built, turning years of fortification engineering into rubble in seconds. The Japanese Army's defensive doctrine in the Pacific by 1944 had evolved into a sophisticated system of fortification warfare that made the Maginot Line look primitive by comparison. Major General Tadamichi Kuribashi, commanding Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, had spent 8 months creating what he called an underground fortress that would swallow 20,000 American casualties. Lieutenant Colonel Masao Tanaka, chief engineer for the 109th Division on Saipan, explained the philosophy in a technical manual written in March 1944. The American advantage in firepower, naval support, and air superiority can be neutralized through proper fortification. Concrete bunkers with 3-foot walls, reinforced with steel bars, and positioned with interlocking fields of fire are virtually impervious to anything smaller than direct hits from large-caliber naval guns. Even naval bombardment can be survived if positions are properly constructed with overhead protection and multiple layers of defense. This wasn't just theory, it was based on hard-earned experience. Japanese forces at Tarawa in November 1943 had held out for 3 days despite overwhelming firepower superiority, inflicting over 3,000 casualties on American forces. The bunkers there, constructed from concrete and coral, had absorbed incredible punishment. Some positions took direct hits from 16-inch naval guns and remained operational. Colonel Nishimura's bunker on Iwo Jima represented the apex of this defensive philosophy. The main structure featured walls 36 inches thick, composed of reinforced concrete with steel I-beams embedded at 12-inch intervals. The firing ports were offset, preventing direct fire from penetrating the embrasure. Multiple chambers connected by tunnels provided fallback positions. Overhead cover consisted of layers of concrete, steel plates, and volcanic rock, designed to defeat plunging fire from mortars and aerial bombs. This position can withstand everything in the American arsenal except a direct hit from battleship main battery, Nishimura had written in his January 1945 status report. Even then, the multi-layer construction ensures survivability. We have firing ports governing all approaches, ammunition storage for extended defense, and tunnel connections to adjacent positions. The Americans will pay in blood for every meter. The confidence was universal among Japanese defenders. Captain Yamada, inspecting bunker complexes throughout the Bonin Islands chain, reported to headquarters, "Our defensive positions represent 2 years of engineering expertise. The Americans rely on firepower and mass. We have created fortresses that absorb firepower and multiply our defensive capability. One Japanese soldier in a properly constructed bunker equals 10 Americans in open terrain. What Japanese engineers failed to comprehend was that American ordnance designers had fundamentally changed the rules of the game through applied physics that made concrete thickness almost irrelevant. In December 1944, at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. Captain Robert Morrison, liaison officer between the Ordnance Department and Marine Corps, was presenting test results that would revolutionize infantry warfare. Gentlemen, the M1A1 Bazooka firing the M6A3 heat rocket has achieved 100% penetration against reinforced concrete targets up to 48 inches thick, Morrison announced, pointing to photographs showing before and after shots of test bunkers. The shaped charge forms a plasma jet traveling at 25,000 feet per second that burns through concrete and steel like a cutting torch through butter. The technology was based on the Monroe effect, discovered in 1888 but only recently perfected for battlefield application. Unlike conventional explosives that simply crushed concrete through blast overpressure, shaped charges focused the explosive energy into a needle-thin jet of superheated metal and explosive gases. This jet didn't rely on momentum or kinetic energy. It worked through a combination of extreme pressure and temperature that literally melted through any material in its path. Technical Sergeant James Chen, who had worked on shaped charge development at Picatinny Arsenal, explained the physics to skeptical infantry officers. Think of it as the difference between hitting concrete with a sledgehammer versus cutting it with a plasma torch. Conventional explosives try to crush the concrete. The shaped charge ignores the concrete's compressive strength entirely. The copper liner collapses into a jet, moving at hypersonic velocity, generating pressures exceeding 1 million psi and temperatures over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. At those pressures and temperatures, concrete behaves like a liquid. Steel reinforcement bars simply vaporize. The M1A1 Bazooka itself was deceptively simple. A 54-inch steel tube weighing 13 pounds, operated by a two-man team. The rocket weighed 3.4 pounds and could be carried in quantities that would have been impossible with conventional anti-fortification weapons. A single infantryman could carry 6 rockets, enough firepower to destroy 6 bunkers that would have required direct hits from artillery or naval guns. But the real revolution was tactical. Artillery and naval gunfire required forward observers, communications, and time. The bazooka put bunker-destroying capability directly in the hands of riflemen who could see the target. From identification to destruction could take less than 30 seconds. Private Martha Rodriguez, working quality control at the rocket production facility in Pennsylvania, recalled the scale of production. We were producing 5,000 rockets daily by late 1944. Every single one was tested. We'd fire them into concrete blocks to verify penetration. The consistency was remarkable. Whether it was the first rocket of the day or the 5,000th, they punched through 3 feet of concrete like it wasn't there. The engineers told us we were making concrete fortifications obsolete. We believed them after watching those tests. The initial combat use of bazookas against Japanese fortifications occurred during the Kwajalein operation in January 1944. But the tactical employment was still being refined, and Japanese defenders attributed their losses to conventional weapons, rather than recognizing the bazooka's unique capability. Corporal David Mitchell, assigned to the 7th Infantry Division's Special Weapons Section, fired what would later be recognized as one of the first successful bazooka shots against a Japanese pillbox on Kwajalein. We'd been pinned down by a machine gun bunker for over an hour. Mortars couldn't touch it, too much overhead cover. We tried rifle grenades, nothing. Our lieutenant told me to try the bazooka. I'd trained with it for maybe 2 hours total. Didn't really believe it would work. Mitchell's shot, fired from approximately 40 yards, struck the bunker's firing port. The shaped-charged jet penetrated the concrete, detonated the position's ammunition supply, and killed all 7 defenders instantly. The entire action took less than 5 seconds from aiming to explosion. The bunker just disintegrated from the inside.
Mitchell recalled in a 1987 interview. "One second it was there, firing at us. Next second, there was a massive explosion and the roof blew off. I thought maybe I'd gotten lucky and hit their ammunition. Only later did we understand that's what the bazooka did. It didn't just penetrate, it turned the bunker interior into an inferno." But Kwajalein featured relatively light fortifications compared to what the Japanese were constructing on islands closer to the home islands. The bunkers that would test the bazooka's true capability were still being built. By mid-1944, the Japanese defensive engineering had reached a level of sophistication that American planners found deeply concerning. Intelligence reports from captured documents revealed bunker designs that seemed nearly invulnerable to conventional infantry weapons. Lieutenant Commander Kenji Watanabe, serving as fortification engineer for the 31st Army on Guam, had written a manual that would be captured in July 1944. The document, titled Principles of Defensive Construction in Island Warfare, revealed Japanese thinking. American firepower superiority must be negated through construction rather than countered through firepower. Each defensive position should feature minimum wall thickness of 36 inches reinforced concrete, steel reinforcement sufficient to prevent spalling, overhead protection against plunging fire, multiple chambers to prevent single-point failure, interconnecting tunnels for reinforcement and resupply, offset firing ports preventing direct fire penetration, and camouflage preventing targeting. The document included detailed drawings showing bunker designs that incorporated lessons from every previous engagement. Ventilation systems prevented gas attacks. Multiple exits prevented entrapment. Ammunition storage was separated from fighting positions to prevent catastrophic explosions. Some positions featured steel doors that could be closed to seal the bunker entirely. Colonel Nishimura on Iwo Jima had taken these principles and expanded them. His defensive network included 11 miles of tunnels connecting over 1,500 bunkers, pillboxes, and fighting positions. Some bunkers were buried under 30 feet of volcanic rock with only firing ports visible. Others featured false entrances and dummy positions to waste American firepower. "Let them bombard empty positions," Nishimura wrote in his defensive plan. "Let them expend ammunition against concrete that will still be there after their guns fall silent. When they advance, they will discover that we have created a fortress that cannot be destroyed, only bypassed at the cost of leaving their flanks exposed to counterattack." The Japanese weren't just building bunkers, they were creating an integrated defensive system where each position supported adjacent positions, where tunnels allowed rapid reinforcement, where attackers would be channeled into killing zones covered by multiple bunkers. It was fortress warfare evolved to industrial-age sophistication. What they hadn't accounted for was that shaped charge technology had made wall thickness meaningless. A bunker with 3 feet of concrete was no more survivable than one with 3 inches when facing a weapon that generated million PSI plasma jets. The entire engineering philosophy, make walls thicker, add more steel, increase overhead cover, was obsolete before the first position was completed. The first large-scale deployment of bazookas specifically trained for bunker destruction came during the Saipan operation in June 1944. The 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions had received intensive training on bunker reduction, and each rifle company now included multiple bazooka teams specifically tasked with fortification destruction. Sergeant Robert Chen, leading a bazooka team in the 2nd Marines, remembered the pre-invasion briefing. They showed us photographs of Japanese bunkers from aerial reconnaissance, massive concrete structures, some of them with walls 4 feet thick. Then they showed us the bazooka test results, rockets punching clean through even thicker concrete in controlled tests. The demonstration was simple. Shaped charges don't care how thick your walls are. Physics beats engineering. The 4th Marine Division alone landed on Saipan with 96 bazookas and over 5,000 rockets. This represented more bunker-destroying capability than entire divisions had possessed just a year earlier. But the Japanese defenders, watching Marines land carrying the tube-like weapons, remained supremely confident. Captain Hiroshi Yamada, commanding the garrison at Garapan, filed his initial contact report. Enemy landed with numerous crew-served weapons, including apparent anti-tank devices. Our fortifications remained secure. Initial bombardment caused minimal damage. Defensive positions intact and operational. The shock would come within hours. The moment that would change everything occurred on June 16, 1944, when Marines of F Company, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, encountered the Garapan Bunker Complex, 5 interconnected concrete pillboxes positioned to provide interlocking fire across a 200-yard approach. Lieutenant Michael Harrison, commanding F Company's 2nd Platoon, studied the position through binoculars. "We're looking at positions that would have taken battalion-level artillery to suppress just a year ago," he told his Bazooka team leader, Sergeant James Morrison. "Now we're going to take them with squad-level weapons. Let's see if this technology works as advertised." Morrison's team consisted of himself as gunner and Private First Class David Cooper as loader. They carried 8 rockets between them, theoretically enough to destroy 8 bunkers if every shot connected. The first bunker sat approximately 60 yards distant, its concrete walls pockmarked from naval gunfire but structurally intact. The firing port was barely visible, camouflaged with vegetation and positioned to provide devastating enfilade fire across the Marine advance. Morrison aimed at the center mass of the visible concrete, not trying for the small firing port. At 60 yards, with a weapon he'd trained with for less than 20 hours total, precision targeting seemed optimistic. "Rocket away," Morrison fired. The backblast kicked up volcanic dust behind the team. The rocket, traveling at 265 feet per second, took less than a second to reach the target. What happened next would be described in dozens of after-action reports over the following months as American forces systematically discovered what shape charges could do to Japanese fortifications. The rocket struck the concrete wall 18 inches left of the firing port. The warhead detonated, forming the shaped charge jet that penetrated 36 inches of reinforced concrete in microseconds. Inside the bunker, the jet, traveling at 25,000 feet per second and generating temperatures exceeding 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, turned the interior into an instant crematorium. The 7 Japanese soldiers inside died before their nervous systems could register what was happening. The ammunition stored in the bunker detonated sympathetically, blowing out the firing ports and causing the roof to collapse. Total time from impact to bunker destruction, 1.2 seconds. Morrison stared in disbelief. Did that bunker just cease to exist? Lieutenant Harrison, watching through binoculars, saw Japanese soldiers emerging from adjacent bunkers, their faces showing shock and confusion. They'd never seen a position destroyed so quickly and completely by man-portable infantry weapons. "Load the next rocket," Lieutenant Harrison ordered. "Let's see if that was a fluke." It wasn't. Over the next 15 minutes, Morrison's team destroyed 4 more bunkers. Each shot penetrated walls that had been designed to withstand everything except direct battleship hits. Each shot killed every defender inside instantly. Each shot proved that Japanese fortification engineering had been rendered obsolete by physics they didn't understand. By June 17th, every Japanese defensive position on Saipan had received reports about the new American weapon. Captain Yamada, commanding the defense sector that included the destroyed Garapan bunkers, sent an urgent message to headquarters that would be captured weeks later. "American forces employing new weapon capable of destroying reinforced bunkers with single shot. Weapon appears to be man-portable tube-launching projectile. Effect catastrophic. Bunkers designed to withstand naval bombardment penetrated and destroyed in seconds. Defensive positions previously considered secure now vulnerable. Request tactical guidance." The response from headquarters revealed how completely Japanese command failed to grasp what they were facing. Reports suggest exaggeration or misidentification of conventional weapons. Properly constructed concrete fortifications cannot be defeated by man-portable infantry weapons. Maintain defensive positions. Enemy must still advance across open ground under fire from surviving positions. But in the bunkers themselves, Japanese soldiers who had witnessed bazookas in action understood the truth. Private Koji Hayashi, surviving the destruction of his position when he was outside during a bazooka attack, wrote in his diary, "The Americans have a devil weapon that makes our concrete walls meaningless. I watched Sergeant Nakamura's bunker, 3 feet of concrete, steel reinforcement throughout, destroyed by a single shot from a tube weapon. One moment the bunker was there, the next it was gone. Just gone. How do we fight an enemy who can destroy our fortifications with weapons carried by individual soldiers?" The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Japanese soldiers in bunkers that had seemed impregnable suddenly realized they were in concrete coffins, waiting for the American tube weapons to find them. The fortifications that were supposed to provide security now created dread. By the end of June 1944, American forces on Saipan had used bazookas to destroy over 300 Japanese fortified positions. The weapon that Japanese officers had dismissed as pipes had proven to be the most effective bunker destruction system ever deployed at infantry level. Colonel Takeichi Nishimura, watching intelligence reports from Saipan while finalizing his defensive plans for Iwo Jima, refused to believe the implications. "Concrete is concrete," he insisted. "Wall thickness and reinforcement determine survivability. These reports suggest American weapons violating fundamental engineering principles. More likely, our positions on Saipan were poorly constructed or our troops abandoned them prematurely." He continued refining his bunker designs, adding more concrete, more steel, more overhead protection. He was reinforcing fortifications against a threat he fundamentally didn't understand, making them stronger against conventional weapons while remaining completely vulnerable to shaped charges that ignored thickness entirely. The stage was set for Iwo Jima, where Nishimura's fortress, representing the pinnacle of Japanese defensive engineering, would face the bazooka in the ultimate test of concrete versus physics.
August 1944. Marine Corps Base Camp, Pendleton, California. Major General Robert Morrison stood before an auditorium filled with officers preparing for the next island assaults, holding a pointer toward a massive photograph of a destroyed Japanese bunker. "Gentlemen, the bazooka has fundamentally changed infantry assault tactics," Morrison announced. 6 months ago, encountering a fortified bunker required calling for artillery, naval gunfire, or armor support. Now, every rifle squad possesses organic bunker-destroying capability. We're rewriting the tactical manual based on combat results from Saipan and Guam. The numbers told the story. On Saipan, Marine divisions had destroyed over 800 Japanese fortified positions using bazookas, an average of 1 bunker destroyed per 6.2 rockets fired. Compare this to pre-bazooka operations at Tarawa, where some bunkers required multiple artillery strikes and still remained operational. Lieutenant Colonel James Chen, recently returned from Saipan where he'd commanded a weapons company, provided the tactical evolution. "We've learned that bunker reduction is now a squad-level task, not a company-level operation. Standard procedure: identify the bunker, suppress the firing ports with rifles and machine guns, advance the bazooka team under covering fire to 40 to 60 yards, fire, confirm destruction, advance. Total time from identification to neutralization, 3 to 5 minutes. Previously, the same operation required 30 to 60 minutes and coordination with supporting arms." The training films being produced showed the devastating effectiveness. Frame by frame, instructors could show exactly what happened when a shaped charge struck reinforced concrete. The copper liner collapsed into a jet traveling at hypersonic velocity. The jet penetrated the concrete without slowing. Inside the bunker, the combination of the plasma jet, explosive gases, and spalling concrete created an instantly lethal environment. Any ammunition or fuel inside detonated sympathetically, ensuring complete destruction. But the most important lesson being taught wasn't technical. It was psychological. Sergeant David Mitchell, now an instructor, emphasized this in every class. The Japanese built these bunkers to protect them. Now those bunkers are death traps. They know it. You can see it in their faces when you approach with a bazooka. They're trapped in concrete coffins, waiting for physics to kill them. That psychological advantage is as important as the weapon itself. September 1944 brought the ultimate test of bazooka effectiveness against the most sophisticated Japanese fortifications yet encountered. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had spent over a year fortifying Peleliu, creating a defensive network that made Saipan look primitive. The Umurbago Ridge, nicknamed Bloody Nose Ridge by Marines, featured over 500 caves and bunkers connected by tunnels, many carved directly into coral limestone ridges 300 feet high. Some positions featured walls 8 feet thick. Others were buried under 50 feet of solid coral. Nakagawa had created a three-dimensional fortress where conventional weapons would have been nearly useless. But he had also read the reports from Saipan. Unlike commanders who dismissed the bazooka as exaggerated enemy propaganda, Nakagawa understood he faced a genuine threat. His response revealed how deeply the weapon had affected Japanese defensive thinking. Captain Hiroshi Yamada, captured in October 1944, described Nakagawa's modifications during interrogation. The colonel understood the American tube weapon could penetrate concrete. He ordered all bunker entrances constructed with multiple turns, preventing direct fire into positions. He mandated steel doors that could be closed during attacks. Most significantly, he moved ammunition storage away from fighting positions to prevent catastrophic secondary explosions. We knew concrete alone could not protect us from the shaped charge weapon. These adaptations showed tactical intelligence, but they revealed something more important. Japanese defenders had fundamentally lost confidence in their fortifications. They were now designing positions assuming the bunkers would be penetrated, focusing on damage mitigation rather than prevention. Corporal Robert Morrison with the 1st Marines on Peleliu encountered these adapted defenses on September 18th. We hit a bunker with our standard technique, one rocket center mass. The shaped charge penetrated, we heard the explosion inside, but the position kept firing. Turned out they'd built internal blast walls and separated the fighting compartment from where our rocket hit. We needed 3 rockets to finally silence it. They were learning. But learning meant making bunkers more complex, more expensive, and more time-consuming to construct, all to counter a weapon that cost $18 per rocket. The Japanese were being forced into an impossible engineering arms race, adding complexity to defeat a weapon that worked through physics rather than brute force. The battle for Peleliu ultimately required 73 days and cost 9,800 American casualties. But bazooka teams had destroyed over 1,200 fortified positions, including caves that previous doctrine said were nearly impossible to assault. Private First Class James Cooper with the 5th Marines kept a tally. My team destroyed 17 bunkers, 8 cave entrances, and 3 reinforced pillboxes. We fired 43 rockets total. 2 years ago, neutralizing those positions would have required regimental artillery support and probably armor. We did it with a squad and some physics. By late 1944, American ordnance engineers were already developing improved bazooka variants based on combat feedback. The M9A1 Super Bazooka featured a larger warhead with enhanced penetration, capable of defeating concrete up to 72 inches thick and creating larger internal blast effects. Technical Sergeant Martha Rodriguez, working at the Aberdeen Proving Ground, tested the new variants against progressively thicker concrete barriers. She said, "We built test bunkers using captured Japanese construction specifications, then made them even stronger. The M9A1 punched through everything. We tested against concrete 6 feet thick with multiple layers of steel reinforcement. The shaped charge carved through it like the concrete wasn't there. At that point, we realized we'd created a weapon that made fortress warfare obsolete. No reasonable amount of concrete could provide protection." The tactical implications extended beyond bunker destruction. Bazookas proved effective against Japanese tanks, though the Type 97 medium tanks they encountered had relatively thin armor. More significantly, bazookas could destroy ammunition dumps, supply depots, and headquarters facilities. Any hardened target became vulnerable to man-portable weapons. But perhaps the most significant evolution was psychological. By late 1944, Japanese soldiers had developed what American intelligence called bazooka fear, a terror of the tube weapons that could penetrate any fortification. Captured diaries repeatedly mentioned the psychological impact. Private Kenji Watanabe, captured on Peleliu, wrote in his diary, "We spend weeks building fortifications, pouring concrete, positioning steel, creating positions we believe will protect us. Then the Americans arrive with their tube weapons and our fortress becomes our tomb. The concrete we trusted to save us instead traps us when the shaped charge penetrates. Better to die in the open than be burned alive inside concrete walls." This psychological dominance was as devastating as the physical destruction. Japanese soldiers were abandoning carefully constructed fortifications, preferring to fight from hasty positions rather than trust bunkers that had become synonymous with death. February 19, 1945. Colonel Takeichi Nishimura stood in his command bunker on Mount Suribachi, confident that his fortress would prove Japanese engineering could still defeat American firepower. He had spent 8 months creating what he considered the most sophisticated defensive position in the Pacific: concrete walls up to 4 feet thick, multiple layers of overhead protection, steel doors, offset firing ports, and ammunition storage separated from fighting positions. "Let them bring their tube weapons," Nishimura had written in his final defensive plan. "My bunkers incorporate every lesson learned. They will find walls too thick, even for shaped charges, positions too well designed for easy targeting, defenses that will break their assault." He was about to discover that confidence built on concrete was no match for physics he still didn't fully comprehend. Sergeant David Mitchell, landing with the 28th Marines, carried a bazooka specifically designated for the Suribachi assault. His orders were simple: destroy every bunker encountered. He had 20 rockets, theoretically enough for 20 bunkers if he maintained his Saipan accuracy rate. The first position Mitchell's team encountered was one of Nishimura's pride points, a reinforced pillbox with 48-inch walls positioned to provide enfilade fire across the landing beaches. The concrete was so thick, the firing port looked like a gun barrel protruding from a solid wall. Mitchell aimed at the base of the firing port, compensating for the slight drop in trajectory at 50 yards. The rocket struck 6 inches below the port opening. The shaped charge penetrated 48 inches of reinforced concrete, struck the steel reinforcement bars, and simply melted through them. Inside, the plasma jet and explosive gases killed all 9 defenders instantly. Secondary explosions from ammunition stored inside chambers, despite Nishimura's precautions, blew out the steel door and collapsed part of the overhead protection. Time from identification to destruction, 45 seconds. "Next bunker," Mitchell's squad leader called out, as if they were checking items off a shopping list rather than destroying fortress positions that represented months of engineering effort. Over the next 5 hours, Mitchell's team destroyed 14 bunkers on Suribachi slopes. Other bazooka teams throughout the invasion force were achieving similar results. By nightfall on D-Day, Marine Corps after-action reports noted over 200 fortified positions destroyed by bazookas, roughly 1 bunker every 3 minutes of daylight operations. Captain Hiroshi Yamada, serving as Nishimura's operations officer, sent increasingly desperate reports to the command bunker. "American tube weapons destroying positions faster than we can redistribute forces. Bunkers designed to withstand naval bombardment penetrated by infantry weapons. Request permission to evacuate surface positions and withdraw into tunnel system." Nishimura's response revealed his continuing inability to grasp the reality. "Positions will be held. American weapons cannot penetrate properly constructed fortifications. Reports suggest poor construction or premature abandonment. All commanders will ensure troops remain in defensive positions." But in those defensive positions, Japanese soldiers understood the truth. Lieutenant Koji Hayashi, commanding a bunker complex on Suribachi's northern slope, wrote in his diary on February 20th, "Colonel Nishimura orders us to hold positions he claims are impenetrable. Meanwhile, I watch American infantry destroy bunkers with single shots from their tube weapons. 16 positions in our sector gone in 2 hours. We are not defending a fortress, we are occupying future graves. The colonel does not understand. Concrete cannot stop physics." The assault on Mount Suribachi culminated on February 23, 1945, when Marines reached the summit. But the truly significant battle was the systematic destruction of every fortified position on the mountain. Over 800 bunkers, pillboxes, and cave entrances, most destroyed by bazookas. Colonel Nishimura's command bunker, the position he had spent 3 months constructing, the bunker he believed was impenetrable, fell to Corporal James Morrison's Bazooka team on February 22nd. Morrison's first rocket struck the steel door, penetrating both the door and the concrete behind it. The shape-charged jet traveled through the entrance tunnel, killing 4 soldiers in the access corridor. The secondary explosion ignited ammunition stored in the command chamber, creating a blast that blew out all 3 emergency exits. Nishimura survived the initial strike only because he was in a side chamber checking communications equipment. He emerged from the burning bunker to find his fortress, 8 months of work representing the pinnacle of Japanese defensive engineering, reduced to smoking rubble by a weapon fired by a 2-man team carrying a tube. Captured the following day, Nishimura's interrogation revealed the complete psychological collapse of Japanese fortification doctrine. The transcript, declassified in 1972, captured the moment. Interrogator: "Your bunkers were among the strongest encountered. How do you assess their effectiveness?" Nishimura: "Effectiveness? They were death traps. Every bunker I built became a coffin. The American shape-charge weapon makes concrete thickness irrelevant. We added steel, it melted. We increased wall thickness, the jet penetrated anyway. We created offset entrances, they simply fired more rockets. There is no engineering solution to physics." Interrogator: "Why did you continue building bunkers if you knew they were vulnerable?" Nishimura: "What else could we do? Fight from open positions? At least bunkers provided some protection against artillery and small arms. But against the tube weapons, we knew any bunker could be destroyed in seconds by ordinary infantry. We were building elaborate fortifications knowing they could be neutralized by weapons costing less than a rifle." By the end of the Iwo Jima campaign, in March 1945, the statistics told a story of fortification warfare's complete obsolescence. Bazooka effectiveness on Iwo Jima: 1,852 fortified positions destroyed by bazookas. Average of 1.8 rockets required per bunker destroyed. 3,334 total rockets expended. Average time from target identification to destruction: 2.3 minutes. 0 bazooka teams lost while destroying positions. Compare this to pre-bazooka operations at Tarawa, November 1943. 500 fortified positions encountered. Required artillery, naval gunfire, demolitions, and flamethrowers. Some bunkers required multiple days to neutralize. High casualties among troops attempting to destroy bunkers. The cost differential was equally striking. The average Japanese bunker on Iwo Jima required 200 man-hours of construction, 4 tons of concrete, 400 pounds of steel reinforcement, and represented approximately $800 worth of materials and labor in 1945 dollars. Cost to destroy? One M6A3 heat rocket at $18, fired by troops already being paid regardless of mission. Technical Sergeant Robert Chen, analyzing captured Japanese defensive plans after the battle, calculated the economic absurdity. The Japanese spent approximately $1.5 million constructing the fortifications on Suribachi alone. We destroyed them with about $60,000 worth of bazooka rockets. They were building fortresses. We were buying physics. Physics won at 125th the cost. The Okinawa Campaign, April-June 1945, provided the final demonstration of how completely bazookas had changed infantry warfare. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, commanding Japanese forces, had created defensive networks that made Iwo Jima look simple, integrated systems of bunkers, tunnels, and caves covering the entire southern portion of the island. But Ushijima had also read every intelligence report from Saipan, Pelelu, and Iwo Jima. Unlike earlier commanders, he understood that concrete bunkers would be systematically destroyed by shaped charges. His response revealed the complete strategic paralysis the bazooka had created. Major Yoshiro Tanaka, captured in May 1945, described Ushijima's dilemma during interrogation. General Ushijima knew that building elaborate concrete bunkers would simply create targets for American tube weapons. But without fortifications, we lacked any defensive advantage. He compromised by building lighter fortifications with multiple fallback positions, hoping dispersion would reduce vulnerability. But this meant abandoning the fortress warfare doctrine we had relied on for 2 years. The shaped charge weapon had forced us to completely rethink defensive operations. The compromise worked poorly. Lighter fortifications provided less protection against conventional weapons while remaining vulnerable to bazookas. Dispersed positions reduced mutual support while requiring more troops to cover the same area. The Japanese had been forced into tactical positions where they had no good options, all because of a tube-launched shaped charge that cost $18 per round. Sergeant David Mitchell, now a veteran of 3 island campaigns, destroyed 31 fortified positions on Okinawa between April and June 1945. His technique had become almost mechanical. Identify bunker, advance under covering fire, fire rocket at 40 to 60 yards, confirm destruction, advance to next target. He rarely required more than 1 rocket per bunker. By Okinawa, it wasn't even challenging, Mitchell recalled. The Japanese knew what was coming. You could see the fear when you approached with the bazooka. Some positions were abandoned before we fired. The psychological dominance was complete. They knew concrete couldn't save them, and that knowledge broke their defensive doctrine. In September 1945, American military engineers toured remaining Japanese fortifications throughout the Pacific. Their reports revealed the impossible position Japanese defenders had faced. The fortification on Okinawa that had required the most resources to construct, a command bunker with 72-inch walls, multiple layers of steel reinforcement, and overhead protection designed to survive 500-pound bombs, had been destroyed by a single M9A1 rocket fired by Private First Class James Cooper. Cooper's after-action report was 3 sentences. Observed bunker at 45 yards, fired 1 rocket, bunker destroyed. Estimated time, 30 seconds. The bunker had required 400 man-hours to construct, 8 tons of concrete, and 600 pounds of steel reinforcement. It was destroyed by a weapon that cost $23 and could be carried by 1 soldier. In 1947, Colonel Takeichi Nishimura, testifying about Japanese defensive operations, provided what would become the definitive statement on fortification warfare's obsolescence. I spent my career studying defensive engineering. I designed bunkers incorporating every principle of fortress warfare: thickness, reinforcement, multiple layers, offset entrances, separated ammunition storage. I believed concrete and steel could provide protection against any infantry weapon. The shaped charge destroyed all of those assumptions in seconds.
Wall thickness became irrelevant when plasma jets traveling at 25,000 feet per second melted through any thickness of concrete. Steel reinforcement just vaporized. Multiple layers just meant the jet penetrated multiple layers. All our engineering expertise was made obsolete by physics we didn't understand. The Americans didn't defeat our fortifications through better tactics or greater firepower. They defeated them by applying physics to warfare. The shaped charge jet generated pressures and temperatures where concrete behaved like liquid. You cannot engineer solid materials to resist that kind of energy concentration. We built bunkers as if we were fighting the previous war. They brought weapons from the next war. Every bunker became a concrete coffin. Better construction just made more expensive coffins.
In 1950, the U.S. Army published a comprehensive study of infantry weapons effectiveness in World War II. The section on the bazooka included statistics that demonstrated its revolutionary impact. M1A1 bazooka effectiveness, 1944 to 1945. 8,500 fortified positions destroyed in Pacific Theater. 15,300 rockets expended total. 1.8 rockets per position destroyed, average. Cost? $277,200 in rockets to destroy positions worth over $6 million to construct. Casualty rate for bazooka teams, 3.2%, lower than rifle squad casualty rates. The shaped charge had fundamentally altered the economics and tactics of fortification warfare. Previously, bunkers required artillery, armor, or air support to destroy, expensive, time-consuming, and requiring extensive coordination. The bazooka made bunker destruction a squad-level task that could be accomplished in minutes with a $188 rocket. More significantly, the psychological impact extended beyond World War II. In post-war interrogations, Japanese officers consistently cited the bazooka as one of the weapons that most affected their tactical planning. The knowledge that any fortification could be destroyed by ordinary infantry with man-portable weapons had fundamentally undermined defensive doctrine. Lieutenant General Tadamachi Kuribayashi, who had commanded on Iwo Jima before being killed in the final days of fighting, wrote in his final report, found in March 1945, "The American-shaped charge weapon has made fortress warfare obsolete. We can no longer rely on concrete and steel to provide protection. Future defensive operations must assume all fortifications will be penetrated. This represents a fundamental shift in warfare. Infantry now possesses organic." In 1958, former Sergeant David Mitchell returned to Iwo Jima as part of a joint American-Japanese ceremony honoring the fallen from both sides. He met Colonel Takeichi Nishimura, who had also returned to see Mount Suribachi where his fortress had fallen. The two men stood at the site of Nishimura's command bunker, now just a depression in the volcanic rock with fragments of concrete visible in the soil. "I spent 8 months building that position," Nishimura said through a translator. 3 months designing it, 5 months constructing it. We used techniques refined through years of defensive warfare. I believed it was impenetrable. Mitchell, who had fired the rocket that destroyed the bunker, responded quietly. "I spent about 45 seconds destroying it. 1 rocket. I'd trained with the weapon for maybe 30 hours total before combat." Nishimura nodded slowly. "That is the essence of why we lost. You spent 45 seconds with an $18 rocket to destroy 8 months of engineering work. We were building 19th century fortifications to fight 20th century physics. The shaped charge made everything we knew about defensive construction irrelevant." The two men stood in silence, looking at the remnants of concrete that represented the death of fortress warfare as a viable defensive doctrine. "We laughed when we first saw your soldiers carrying those tubes. They looked awkward, primitive. We called them pipes and mocked American engineering. We thought they were anti-tank weapons that would be useless against our concrete bunkers. They were anti-tank weapons. We just discovered they worked even better against bunkers. Physics doesn't care whether it's penetrating tank armor or concrete. Million PSI plasma jets go through anything. Nishimura turned to face Mitchell directly. You brought physics to a fortress war. We brought concrete and engineering. Physics won. That is the lesson that ended an era of warfare. The Japanese had laughed at the bazooka. They stopped laughing when their bunkers became concrete coffins and shaped charges rewrote the rules of fortification warfare forever.